If you've been following me, you already know I'm setting up a new aquarium. In this video, you'll see the entire process, from dismantling my old tank to building my brand new one, which is 10 times bigger. This is my large tank in its first few months. I placed a few small coral fragments to get things started. There's another video where I show more details. On this day, my rocks finally arrived. I was so happy because after 3 months, I would finally have my rock layout complete. They were very well packed since they could easily break during shipping. They even arrived a bit damp, but luckily that didn't affect the rocks. Everything came in perfectly. Here's a picture of the rocks. There are a lot of them, seriously. That's because I wanted to recreate this specific layout I had as a reference, but I started to realize that I would end up with too many rocks in the tank. Some would cast shadows over others, and since I love making new coral frags, I decided to shorten the layout to make more space. I also made sure no rock would block light from the corals in front. This is where the layout started coming together. After 4 days, I managed to finish. It took quite a bit of time because I had to wait for each glued section to dry before moving on. I was really excited about it, finally placing the first rock in the layout. My idea was to create a V shape extending toward the back to avoid covering the front area. SPS corals will go on top, LPS in the middle, and soft corals at the bottom. You can see a lot of bubbles rising. That's normal. Now I'm adding the second rock. For that, I had to clear some space to avoid placing it on top of any coral or rock. Now let's move on to a bittersweet moment, dismantling my old aquarium. It stayed with me for several months and taught me so much. In it, I truly learned how to manage a reef system. It was about 9 gallons, which is quite difficult to keep stable, but with the right knowledge, products, and equipment, I made it work. One very important point, the parameters in both tanks were very close to each other. I transferred some of the biological media from the small tank to the new one, as well as rocks and various colonized elements. So the animals didn't suffer from the transition. It was a slow process that took months. Ammonia levels were already at 0, and the macro elements were stable and similar. I placed the clownfish, who have been with me for a few months, into the new tank, and I gathered all the corals into a bucket. While cleaning the old tank, I was also acclimating the corals, slowly adding water from their future tank into the bucket. And finally, the time came to place the corals in the new tank. I want to put the anemones in the center to create a sense of movement, the soft corals at the bottom, and the LPS a bit higher up. I also brought in a few rocks from the old aquarium, which will greatly help colonize and stabilize the new system. Now back to the old tank. It's time to empty it. But remember, I need to do it carefully. as there are still countless micro life forms living there. I gently removed all the substrate because I'll be reusing it in the new tank to support microlife reproduction. I'm also removing the biological media from the old system and placing it all in the new one. The old tank already had pink algae, which usually appears when a tank is mature and stable. After removing all the substrate, it's time to transfer everything into the new aquarium. Of course, the water gets quite cloudy due to all the substrate kicking up dirt. Now I'm adding the rest of the items. When I look back at the old tank, I realized there were still a lot of amphipods. So I started removing things even more carefully. And finally, I dismantled the tank. A few days later, I decided to buy my first SPS corals. And this is what the new version of the tank looks like. For me, it's a dream come true.